Hello everyone, Sientir here, and today I've got another Rambler for you, and I think that I want to take today to just take some time to do some reflection. It's important to do that every now and then, and so I kind of just want to go over some of what this channel has been, some stuff associated with it, with like the Patreon and all of that, and just kind of my thoughts on some of the stuff that I want to do forward, and whatever else happens to come up to me while I'm talking. It'll probably be a little bit more rambly today rather than having kind of a specific focus subject, if that makes sense. So I've definitely, just thinking over the Ramblers, as things have progressed, I've kind of found, to me, a shape or a niche or some sort of like fit. Some of that's driven by the people that I know are part of my audience, as will always be the case. And part of it is that there's a certain sort of feel that I feel. Man, that's redundant sounding, but a certain sort of feeling that I feel that the Ramblers have developed. So that leads me to want to kind of approach a couple of different shows to kind of run on Sundays every now and then. So let's back up and kind of look at things. So when I started the Ramblers, the idea was that I'd kind of talk about whatever was interesting to me, which is fairly broad. And the concern that I have with something that's such a broad subject is that it can, particularly with it being once a week, it can kind of leave a little bit of a, what's the right term? An inconsistency in what can be expected from it. So what I want to do, and so what I feel like the shape of the Ramblers and what they've kind of developed into is something between like trying to explain theology more generally, philosophy, some stuff about like society and that sort of stuff, and kind of more in this sort of thinking space, if that makes sense, I guess, kind of like a general sort of thinking philosophical space, which I like, and it's a place where I'm happy to have them be, and there's definitely plenty for me to talk about there and muse about and whatnot. But because I feel like that's what they've kind of become, which again I'm happy with, there are other subjects that I want to talk about that I don't feel like they quite fit into that direction. Some of these in particular are, I feel like game design, while I greatly enjoy it, is a little bit out of place. So I think I'm wanting to expand the scope of the one show that I've done, the game review and analysis, which has the ability to kind of, at least in my mathematical mind, shift the analysis part to the game and talk about just like random stuff that I want to talk about when it comes to games. So I'm probably going to expand the scope of what that show is and put game design stuff there that I talk about, because I feel like it doesn't quite fit in what the Ramblers are, if that makes sense. The other thing that I want to do is I definitely want to make content that's more directly focused specifically at people who are already Christians and talking about issues for Christians specifically, and I'm happy for other people to listen to them, of course, but I'm going to make certain assumptions on knowledge and that sort of thing. And those shows they would kind of like share off with the game stuff, and because my current intention would be to have them be on Sundays, but the reason for it is because I don't feel like it quite fits in the same space as the Ramblers either. It also requires a slightly different production schedule because I want to be able to include Bible verses in sort of a video display, because that is very important when you're discussing a lot of these things that are making arguments, biblical arguments. For a lot of the Ramblers, I'm not generally going to be making biblical arguments. I'm going to make more general arguments, particularly when I'm talking about Christian theology, because I feel like, again, the audience that I'm aiming the Ramblers for is, well, I think that there's certainly stuff that I talk about theologically that appeals to Christians. I don't necessarily want to expect that of the audience, and in fact, I very much so want to not expect that, and I do not expect non-Christians to take biblical arguments particularly seriously. I don't know why they should. So I want to be very careful about having a distinct separate focus with these. So that's some of what I'm looking to do and thinking about approaching. And otherwise, also just with the Patreon, that's been going well, I think. I have been doing, and for those who have taken a look at the Patreon page, you'll note the mention of it there, but I have been doing daily audio logs on that, so I want people to be aware of that. And I'm going to discuss what those are a little bit. I call it a Dear Patron, and it's for $5 and up patrons. And the idea of that is it's a daily audio log. So I talk some about what's going on with my day or some thoughts that I've had connected with it. And then I use Bible Gateway's verse of the day and I talk about that. So that is a very regular podcast. Length varies. So you have some idea of what that is. And I just want people to be aware of it. I've done like over 75 now because it turns out when it's daily, you make a lot more of them than when it's once a week. And that frequency is really why with the Ramblers, I want to split off these other shows. So consider this something of a channel update, I suppose, and some reflection on how things have progressed. So there's not a whole lot else necessarily for me to say specifically about the channel and all of that. I definitely want to make people aware that there's a couple of different places where this goes up. The first one is obviously it goes up on Facebook. It's a little hard to understand exactly what the statistics mean that they provide you, but it looks like from an analytics standpoint that most people are listening to this on the Facebook version. I also release on the Patreon an audio-only version, so that is an MP3 file that you can download, for example, if you want to. So that's something that is publicly available. You can just follow the Patreon rather than specifically supporting me. You can follow it and you'll automatically be let know when those happen. If you prefer to download an audio version or something, just want to make sure people are aware of that. I also upload these to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/Voidonic Sientir. That's VOIDONICSIENTIR. So that's another place where you can watch them if you want to, just so that way people know. And the other thing that I do also on the YouTube channel, and I linked them on my Facebook, is a programming series called Let's Program. The idea behind the series is that I have some sort of program that I want to make, and I set about creating it, and that process takes some number of episodes. Depends upon which program I'm working on. And the idea behind it is that I haven't already mapped out everything that I'm going to do. So you kind of see me run into problems and figure stuff out as I go. And I try to be very vocal about what I'm doing, what my thought process is, and how I'm going about approaching it. There's also a couple of sort of primers on programming in C#, which is the language that I'm using. Just some reference stuff, and that's about an hour total, I think. It's about 2 episodes. I try to aim episodes to be about half an hour. I sometimes overshoot that, sometimes very dramatically. So that's a weekly show as well, and that comes out on Fridays. So anyone who's interested in that, I definitely would appreciate feedback, because I haven't gotten a whole lot on it at the time of this recording. And I'd like to know how followable it is, if it's something that really people enjoy quite a bit. It's possible that I could up the rate that they're being released. But for now, once a week is kind of the schedule, just because I enjoy doing them, so I want to keep doing them, but there's not necessarily as much traction for it at the moment, just in terms of like any feedback to me about the format. So if it's something that you would consider just taking a gander at, I recommend starting at the beginning of one of the episodes, taking a look there if you're interested. I'll see about including links to the playlist for it in the description. So that's a lot of what I'm doing content-wise. And there's more stuff that I've been banding about and thinking about doing. So we'll see if I start making them. But I definitely want to start up the more stuff with those other shows that I was mentioning. So that wraps up a lot of kind of the reflections. I'm happy with what the Ramblers are, and I'm happy to be doing this podcasting thing. I'm happy to be talking, to be expressing myself and sharing myself with the world. In particular, by the way, just so that way people have a bit of a heads up while I'm thinking about it, because why not? May is my birthday month, so I'm planning on talking a lot about my personal views and history and whatnot then, just that way people have a chance to get to know me a little bit better, get to know what my thought process is, and all of that sort of thing. Anyway, I think that sums up a lot of what I want to talk about. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. If anybody has any sort of thoughts on what they like from the Ramblers, I'd love to hear it. And like I mentioned, I definitely like feedback on Let's Program. Until next time, you can absolutely like my page on Facebook at facebook.com/Sientir'sRamblers. You can support me financially on Patreon at patreon.com/Sientir. And you can also always email me directly at sientir@gmail.com. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.